Thank you, Sue. I welcome you, as Sue indicated, not just sort of as an act of local civic boosterism, but as a colleague. We in the city of Madison have been attempting, beginning 4 years ago, to implement these practices in quality and productivity on a municipal scale. And although there are quite a few barriers to implementing these quality techniques in any organization, I think if you think a little bit about municipalities and the barriers that we have, it might be more understandable why more cities haven't undertaken these techniques. First of all, I have a 2-year term as mayor. Now, that doesn't give you much confidence that constancy of purpose is going to be achieved if every 18 months you're going to have to get all tangled up in issues of trash collection or civic center construction and so forth. I also have a board of directors of 22 individuals who are elected for 2-year terms, and they're no party affiliation. So if I, as the mayor, propose something, there's no necessity that any member of the council will say, well, that's a member of my team, I really ought to go along with that official, and I'll try to ask questions and find out later. The general reaction is 22 people saying, huh? Why did he do that? We also have a very strong civil service protection in the city of Madison. When I took over as mayor, I could appoint my immediate 3 mayoral aides and 1 secretary. Not the city attorney, not the director of administration, planning and development, police, fire, streets. All of those individuals could outweight me if they wished and administer their programs as well as they could and to be secure in that position. And lastly, I think that there's probably not a handful of people in the whole country who think that when you say, I'm a politician and I can help you improve your management, think that you have anything whatsoever to offer. Those barriers can be overcome, and that's my brief message this morning. 4 years ago, we adopted a strategy of basically starting with projects, finding within our organization those people in whom we had confidence, based on intuition, we had confidence could grasp the importance of this, would naturally be able to overcome barriers, would demonstrate that individual quality of leadership to bring others along with their vision, joining in our vision from the steering committee level. And by selecting a group of a couple of people, a couple in motor equipment, a more traditional application where you deal with things, the health department, the police department, we've chosen a number of areas where we've had projects. And from projects, we have advanced to a citywide training, a level of training for all individuals, a team leader and facilitator training, people who have those special meeting kinds of skills, who then can work outside of their area of responsibility, so they don't have a stake in the outcome, and work in another department to facilitate a project. And we've had to overcome the barriers of who pays for that time and how is it accounted, because our departments in a budgetary sense are rather separate. We've integrated the labor union leadership into our steering committee. After 3 years, we finally did it this summer, so that serving on the steering committee, we have the council president who will join us on the first of the year. We have 3 individuals with union affiliation, a steward and a president, 3 top-level managers, 3 middle managers, and 3 frontline people, so we can communicate throughout the organization. And there have been problems, and there have been barriers, and there have been opportunities. But my principal message this morning is that it can work in a political setting with a 2-year term, with a city council that has a variety of interests, with a strong civil service system, and with a new management idea that doesn't have very much specifically to do with municipal government. I'd like to say 2 other things briefly. One is I am so glad that this conference is in honor of Bill Hunter. He was the person who persuaded a member of my staff, David Miller, that David ought to attend a Deming conference. I attended one of the 4-day sessions. We worked with Bill, and without his steadfast determination and that extra sort of energy and focus that he brought to so many of our meetings, we would not be on the path that we're currently on. And a very important theme of our efforts in the city is that ordinary people can extraordinary things. We don't point to one or two or three people and say, you know, they've got a terrific education and they've got a background that you never knew about, and that's why they're able to do these things. They're ordinary people who can do extraordinary things because of the power of the ideas and the power of the techniques. And I think that when you meet Bill Hunter and got to know him a little bit, he didn't appear to be an extraordinary speaker or a dynamic leader. He appeared to be someone that you could get to know, who had strengths and weaknesses, but he did some very great things. And we're really proud to have been one of the projects that he got started. And my last thing I'd like to say is I'd like to encourage you to encourage people in government to think about, learn about, and to practice these ideas. When you look at our trade deficit, when you look at our budget deficit in Washington, and when you look at the lack of productivity in industry after industry, the lack of pride that workers take when they go to work, the union labor difficulties across the country that have caused communities to suffer so much and corporations not to do well, the kind of energy and enthusiasm and pride and success that has happened in so many private sector situations can and I think must be part of our overall national policy agenda. And it is hard to make that point. And I know it very well. I'm talking to my colleagues about this across the country. We have some colleagues from Bellevue, Washington. Kingsport, Tennessee has taken many steps along these lines, but that's just a small handful of municipalities. And I think we need to talk about this to members of Congress, to governors, to mayors, to executives across the country, so that we can increase an understanding of the power and the positive impact these kind of techniques can have. I'm very glad to be a part of this movement. I will spend every moment the next 2 days at the conference. We have about 30 members of our city workforce here at every level attending the conference, contributing to the conference. It's important to us, and I wish all of the members of the conference a happy and profitable stay in our city. And if any member of the city, or if I can be of any assistance to you, to talk about the programs we're so proud of, or our city that we're so proud of, please buttonhole us. We'll do the best we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Joe. It's a real pleasure to have your direct involvement and support in this conference. And I should note also that the mayor is a member of our board of directors of the Madison Area Quality Improvement Network. We're very proud to have him as a member and to have his support. There are a lot of people that are standing in the doorways at the back, and I'd like to encourage you at this time to come forward. There are seats up in the front here on both sides, and I'd hate to have you standing for the rest of the morning. We're not going to take a break until about 10:15, so now is a good time to come in. Also, for those of you who may have your chairs facing towards the back, you may want to turn them around because we are going to have some visual presentations this morning, and it would be much easier to just turn your chairs now than to be craning your necks all morning. There are still lots more spaces for you in the back. Come on in. There are a number of seats right up here in front in the middle also. Okay, before I lose control of you, let's continue on with our program. This isn't a break yet. This conference has been developed, as has been mentioned, as a tribute to Dr. William G. Hunter. Bill Hunter was an instructor to many of us here. He was on the cutting edge of quality improvement work and a true leader and catalyst in this area. He was also a very dear friend to many of us. And there's no one better to explain the importance of Bill's work than his dear friend and distinguished colleague from the University of Wisconsin, Dr. George Box. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Box.
Bill Hunter died in Madison in still seems hardly possible, and we miss him now more than ever before. So what can I tell you about Bill? Much of the facts of his distinguished career you already know or you can read, for example, in the University Memorial Resolution to Bill. I'll recall for you some of those things and some other things that aren't there. And I shine slide, and I think perhaps if we turn off that light, I can still see green. That picture was taken about 1964. Does anyone have a flashlight? Because I think it does not. There is actually a little light up here. Okay, well, there's, you never get absolutely perfect quality in one of these things. So you can turn it down just a bit more, I can still see, that's fine. Okay. The university resolution says his undergraduate and first graduate work was in chemical engineering. A BSc at Princeton was followed by a 1960 master's degree at the University of Illinois. He then switched to statistics and became a graduate student to the newly formed Department of Statistics at the University of Wisconsin. His 1962 master's degree was quickly followed by a 1963 PhD. He was immediately appointed to the faculty at the university and became associate professor in 1966 and professor in 1969. Now, when I read that, I remember when I was at Princeton in 1959, and I was asked to teach an informal course in statistics to graduate students in chemical engineering. There's no need for grades or exams in this course, I was told. So at the end of the semester, I was perplexed when I received a request from the Dean's office for a grade for a student called William Gordon Hunter. But I'm not supposed to give grades, I said. These are all graduate students. Oh no, they said, Hunter is an undergraduate and must be given a grade. Bill wrote a letter to me last year in which he remembered what had happened. He said, being only an undergraduate, I had to go on a scavenger hunt and collect signatures from 5 designated deans before being allowed to enroll in your course. I remember being given damp, limp pages reeking of ditto fluid at the beginning of each lecture. And I was enchanted with the geometric explanation of things, and I learned what degrees of freedom were, and I saw how statistics could help people. Well, I gave Bill an oral exam, easy questions, hard questions. Bill got everyone right. And when I phoned the Dean's office telling him that he had passed with the highest grade on the Princeton 7-point scale, they said, oh, good. That means he's graduated magna cum laude. At Princeton, Bill not only graduated with this high honor, he was a General Motors Scholar, received the F.C. Zeisberg Award, the Hildebrandt Prize, and membership in Phi Beta Kappa. In his letter to me, Bill continued, I discovered somehow, I don't remember how, that you were headed for Wisconsin to start a new statistics department there. So in the meantime, I made plans to get a master's degree at Illinois in chemical engineering in 1960. My intention was to go to Wisconsin. Come to Wisconsin he did in the fall of 1960, just as the department started. He afterwards told me that I met him at the airport and took him to dinner at my house, and we had champagne. A few minutes after leaving, he returned. I answered the door. I've come back to ask if I could have the cork of that champagne bottle as a memento, he said. Bill loved Madison, and he stayed with us for the next 27 years. Later on, he liked to show these slides of the city and the university as a preview to describe describing the quality effort at Madison, to which he contributed so much. The university resolution continues, how many teachers from any university can change fundamentally the way that students think? The number is small enough that such a teacher is an institutional treasure. Bill was such a treasure. His writing was elegant and lucid. His lectures were fun. Complicated ideas unfolded clearly, vividly, painted to stick in the mind. He didn't merely teach statistics, he excited his students, whatever their area of interest, about using statistics to become better scientists. He is legendary in the statistics profession for his innovative teaching. His method of teaching design of experiments by letting students actually perform an experiment is now used throughout the world. You perhaps have seen the article he wrote, The American Statistician, describing 32 such experiments. These were simple factorials conceived, carried out, and reported on by the individual students. They included beer making, piloting an airplane, riding a bike, making popcorn, hitchhiking, and playing a tape deck. I remember on the hitchhiking experiment, the factors were location, where the person who was trying to hitch a ride stood, the time at which he stood there, and whether he stood there with or without crutches. It turned out to be a definite disadvantage to be hitchhiking a ride with crutches. This is, of course, only a selection. Bill told me about some of the others, which were more exotic but less publishable. Students were allowed to work in pairs, and he told me with amusement about one enterprising couple who ran a fascinating experiment on the effect of various factors on their enjoyment of copulation. The experiment had to be completed in a fairly short time, and Bill felt that they would be congratulated not only for their devotion to science, but also for their stamina. Bill's research initially reflected his chemical engineering background, contributing important work in chemical kinetics, experimental design, data analysis, model building, and Bayesian methodology. But it expanded to include statistics in law, the art of statistical consulting, environmental protection, and quality and productivity in manufacturing and management. He published more than 90 articles. Bill's work was recognized with many honors. He was a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, a Fellow of the American Statistical Association, a Fellow of the American Society for Quality Control, and a Fellow of the Royal Statistical Society. He was awarded the Frank Wilcoxon Prize in 1973 and was presented with the Schul Award in 1971 and again in 1981 by the Chemical and Process Industries Division of the American Society for Quality Control. In 1972 he was Fulbright Lecturer in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. In 1976-77 he was Fulbright Lecturer at the University of Ife in Nigeria. In 1983, he presented the Youth Memorial Lecture at the Fall Temple Conference for the American Society for Quality Control and the American Statistical Association. He was, for almost 20 years, an Associate Editor of Technometrics. He was the founding Chairman of the Statistics Division of the American Society for Quality Control, which is now the second largest division of that society. He served on the Board of Directors of the American Statistical Association. He was Chairman of the Section of Physical and Engineering Sciences of the American Statistical Association, was Chairman of the Gordon Conference in Statistics in Chemistry and Chemical Engineering. In 1984, his citation for fellowship in the American Statistical Association said he received the honour for contributions to experimental design and data analysis, for a unique ability to combine statistical research and consulting responsibilities into enthusiastic and memorable teaching, for special efforts to enhance statistical programs in developing countries, and for many contributions to the profession. This citation encapsulates not only Bill's career, but also his way of life. which was to help people in industry or university, in the United States or abroad, although teaching and research, or through teaching and research and public service. Bill's concern for making things better for others related in lectures in North and South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, over a period of 30 years. He and his family made extended foreign trips. Conditions in which they found themselves were often not ideal, but they were encountered with typical good humour and understanding. I remember some of the stories Bill and Judy told about their family's year-long visit to the University of Ife in Nigeria. Bill had been awarded a Fulbright lectureship, and he worked hard and with success to improve the quality of life in that country. It was hard going, but the family approached the problems with typical good humour, and the visit had its lighter moments. The following story came up when Bill and I happened to be discussing autoregressive processes and how you have to have some way of getting them started, because in an autoregressive process, each observation depended on the previous ones, and data has to begin somewhere. Bill said it reminded him of a problem he had in Nigeria when he asked if they could buy some beer. Oh yes, they were told, as much as you like. But when they went to get it, they were asked, where are your empty bottles? You cannot have beer unless you bring the same number of empty bottles. I'm sure Bill and Judy solved that problem, but I'm not sure how. A great deal of Bill's philosophy, wisdom and humour is to be found in the book Statistics for Experimenters, of which he was a co-author. I remember while we were writing this, I once sang to him what I could remember of a song I had heard when I lived in England called Experiment. Bill liked the words very much and thought that it would make a great foreword for the book. But I didn't have all the words. And the curious thing was that although I was almost sure it was written by Cole Porter, nobody we spoke to in this country had ever heard of it. This was a kind of mystery that intrigued Bill, and that he was good at unravelling. He returns from his next trip to England excited and triumphant with a fascinating story. After some preliminary investigation, which took him to the Victoria and Albert Museum, he visited the British Institute of Recorded Music in South Kensington. The receptionist directed him to an elderly gentleman whose name might have been Peabody or something of that sort, and on being told of his mission, Mr. Peabody stood up and sang the song all through. He said, yes, it was by Cole Porter from a show called Nympheron, which opened in London in 1933 starring Gertrude Lawrence. But for some reason it had never run in the United States, which was the reason that nobody ever heard the song here. Bill also discovered that the copyright was owned by Warner Brothers of the United States and Chappell's in London. We wrote to them and said we wanted to put it in the statistics book that hardly anyone would read. And as I recall, Warner's settled for $25 and Chappell's for £10. Bill liked the song so much that he used to play it for the class when we taught a course out of that book. He used to play it for the class as a special treat. And I'm sure you'd like to hear it too. And here it is.
Before you leave this portal to meet less fortunate mortal, there's just one parting message I will give to you. You all have learned reliance on the sacred teachings of science, so I hope through life you never will decline future come on for you if but the joy of Maryland, and you'll see.
Another thing I remember about that book is that at a critical stage in its writing, the Watergate hearings began. Bill was intrigued and so was I, but we both felt guilty about time not spent on the book. So we rationalised. Well, we've got to eat lunch anyway, so we might as well watch the hearings during lunch. And later on, well, another half hour won't make any difference. It's a wonder we ever finished that book. Bill, I remember, was fascinated with Senator Sam Ervin's eyebrows. The level at which Bill considered a reliable guide to the credibility of the testimony. When on several occasions those eyebrows almost disappeared, Bill's characteristic chuckle was infectious. The official resolution says Bill Hunter was throughout his career deeply involved in problems related to quality and productivity. For example, he wrote several articles about how developing countries could take advantage of simple statistical techniques, in particular experimental methods and evolution operation. When American industry in the early 1980s showed renewed interest in the use of statistics, Bill began to devote a large proportion of his work to research and teaching on the statistical aspects of improving quality and productivity. His friendship with Dr. Edward Deming, led to the very successful seminar for industry on the Madison campus, and 3 other conferences on quality improvements quickly followed. As a result of these activities, with Bill's leadership, encouragement, and warm personal involvement, the City of Madison and the Wisconsin State Government initiated a novel and successful campaign to improve quality and productivity in the public sector. Bill's work at Madison's Vehicle Maintenance Garage, for example, has received national recognition. My mind goes back to Bill's university course on quality and productivity that he taught in the spring semester of 1985. It was taught on Tuesday evenings, and not just to university students and faculty. Others attending were the executive vice president and several tellers from the largest of the Madison banks, the mayor's personal assistant, David Miller, and 2 mechanics from the maintenance garage, the city vehicles, and many managers and nurses from Madison General Hospital, as well as engineers and managers from local and not so local industries. The very first week of the course, Bill asked everyone to choose a project on which they would work. The bank decided to work on getting your accounts right. It turned out that at the time, if you opened an account at the bank, there was a far from negligible chance that something would be wrong. Your name would be wrong, your address would be wrong, the amount would be wrong, it would go into the wrong account, and so forth. At the end of that course, careful collection of data and study of data by the tellers, it led to, there's some people you know that, had led to the reduction of the error rate very substantially. The nurse administrator of the hospital, as a matter of fact, subsequently became my wife, discovered that the lists of telephone numbers for nurses, doctors and administrators to be called in an emergency was substantially in error. She proceeded to study how this could be corrected and in the future properly maintained. There were many projects there. There are a number of guest lecturers. I think by far the most successful of these were Joe Turner and Terry Holmes, 2 mechanics from the mayor's maintenance garage, where all the police cars, garbage trucks and so forth were repaired and serviced. They told us how the effectiveness of the garage had been greatly improved during using the Deming way, in one piece of work under Bill's guidance and with help from Peter Schultes, they had collected and studied suitable data on the repair of vehicles. For example, when a police car came in for service, how long did it wait on the lot? How long did it wait for spare parts? How long did it take to fix it? How long did it sit in front, on the front lot before the police picked it up? These results were surprising and led to a reduction in the time the vehicles were out of commission from 10 days to 2 days. The two lecturers told us what they most liked about the Deming way was less cussing and more discussing. I suppose they might have added more Deming and less condemning. That's the one with the, I can't see very well, that's the one with the man. They also told us about the paperweight they made for the mayor's desk. It was a large, broken aluminum piston from a garbage truck with a head of a steel exhaust valve jammed into it. When the mayor came to see them, they presented it to him and said, "This cost you $3,200. And this, they said, is a spring that costs $1.50. They went on to explain how, if they had had a preventive maintenance program, the spring would have been replaced and this costly repair would not have been needed. They got their maintenance program, and as Dr. Deming recorded in his classic book, Out of Crisis, the mayor responded in these words: "You know how to find problems, you know how to solve them, and you wish to solve them. We should get out of your way and let you do it. I'm very impressed with what you've shown us today, and we're going to extend these methods to other departments in the city. I see no reason why they should not also be used in state and federal government." The people in Bill's class all remember how we arranged that one day we all would take off in a bus for the Quasar plant just outside Chicago. They were making television sets, and they told us that when they first took over the plant, the defect rate was 146%. You may wonder how you get a defect rate of 146%. Not hard. It means that every television set probably is coming off the line at least once, and some television sets twice. After several years, with some people going on a trip, when we all are at the plant, and that's a graph they were very proud of. After several years of continuous small improvements, the defect rate had been reduced to 2% from 146%. Several years it took them. The interesting thing, they were all Chicagoans and not a Japanese inside. Going back to the university resolution for a minute, we read, Bill believed that the United States needed to stem its decline in international competitiveness. This led to his founding in 1985 of the Center for Quality and Productivity Improvement. He was determined to make this the best research institution on this subject in the world. He was tireless and put a tremendous effort into starting the center. After learning he was terminally ill, he pressed ahead. His optimism and effort in his last year of life were truly heroic. His work is bearing fruit at the center, and the center now regularly publishes research reports, teaches special courses for industry, and receives substantial support from major United States industries. Bill believed that quality begins at home. He was anxious to ensure that we practiced what we preached. From its inception, therefore, he decided the Center for Quality would have a meeting every Tuesday morning in which everyone in the center, the faculty, the visitors, the students, the secretary, the typist, would all be present and would all have an equal say. The meeting was to start precisely at the specified time, and lateness resulted in a fine, $1 per faculty and 10 cents for students. This was the way he set out the agenda, and that is exactly the way we still do it every Tuesday morning. You will see in particular that we have last week's to-do list, where each person to do something, by the present meeting must report on it. Either he's got it done or he's got an excuse why he didn't, which has to sound good. The resolution goes on to say that his research activities went far beyond the published contributions. How many different projects were enriched by his generous expert advice is unknown, but the number must be large. Doing statistics excited Bill, and his little black book was filled with appointments to meet with people who were doing statistics. In these appointments, one had all of Bill's attention and enthusiasm. Even though many times the statistics of the problem under consideration must have been simple, Bill was never bored, quite the reverse. He was always enthusiastic about helping people with real problems. And as I'm sure you know, the people he worked with grew not only to respect him, but to love him. In particular, this was true of Joe Turner and Terry Holmes. Dr. Bill was not only their mentor, but their friend. When Bill was dying, they asked him what they could do for him. He told them, "You can dig my grave." And lovingly and respectfully, they did just that. About 12 months before he died, Bill knew he was terminally ill. His courage during these last months and his determination to enjoy what was left and share his enjoyment with his friends and his family was quite extraordinary, as was the love and support he received from his wife Judy and his sons Jack and Justin. He leaves a rich heritage, typified in particular by the Madison Area Quality Improvement Network and the UW Centre for Quality and Productivity Improvement. We carry in our hearts the inspiring memory not only of a scholar, but of a man who was resourceful, warm, skillful, courageous, optimistic, helpful, enterprising, and generous. His career was whole and balanced in a way that is rare. And as we grieve his death, we also celebrate the life of a remarkable man. And now I ask you to stand in silence for 1 minute to remember with love and gratitude our distinguished colleague and good friend, Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Box. Your remarks are very much appreciated by those of us who knew Bill. It's hard for me to continue at this point. I'm sure that you've given great insight to those who did not have the opportunity to work with or to meet Bill.